Hi, I'm Alex Noy with Seyon Group Real Estate, and here with me is Suzette Reed with Movement Mortgage.
Hi.
Thank you for taking the time to help us understand the mortgage process a little bit better. But first of all, I'd like to ask you, why would a home buyer be better served with a mortgage lender like Movement Mortgage over, say, their own retail bank?
Okay, the retail banks have lots of different products that they're going to offer a client, which is going to include credit cards, car loans, banking products, possibly investment accounts. Mortgages, those are some of their products that they offer, but that is not what they focus on. With Movement Mortgage, this is all that we do, and primarily for purchases. So we make sure that we follow the contract deadlines and that we close on time.
If someone's thinking of buying a home soon, what can they do to prepare?
Well, you know, there's so much that they can do to prepare. And a lot of times we find that our clients come to us a little bit too late. If a client is looking at purchasing 6 months to a year down the road, they tend to think that that is too soon to start thinking about, or too far away, I apologize, for them to be thinking about fixing anything on their credit perhaps, or start saving money. But if we can take a look at their credit and we can see, perhaps we can improve their score, perhaps we can indicate to them what credit cards or accounts they should pay off, possibly close, which accounts won't count against their debt to income ratios, what kinds of things they can do to structure themselves to be in the best position to apply for the loan. I always tell my clients, my borrowers, that we're basically their attorneys in essence when we're presenting a case to the judge. So we want to be able to prepare the best case possible when we're presenting that to our underwriters to make sure that we have all our T's crossed and our I's dotted.
And is it true that running a credit report too often can hurt your credit score?
That is absolutely true, Alex. You don't want to run your credit all the time. It's very important that you have as few inquiries as possible. Now, one thing about credit, though, is if you're doing a transaction, say for a mortgage, they tend to look at the grouping of inquiries during that period of time as a single transaction. It does affect your score, but it's really the first one that affects it the most. Oh. What I've been told by the credit bureaus is typically the first one's somewhere around 12 points, and then the ones after that are going to be less than that. That said, you don't want to be rate shopping with multiple companies. It's really best to develop a relationship with your mortgage loan officer and stick with one company. And that doesn't mean you can't ask about what rates are available. Of course, any smart consumer wants to do that. But what you don't want to do is take, say, your 645 score down to a 630, and all of a sudden you're qualifying for, half a point higher because of that change in score.
That's great information, Suzette. Could you tell us a little bit about the actual mortgage loan process after an offer has been accepted?
Absolutely, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you about the process here at Movement because it is a little bit different than other lenders. So at Movement, once the offer is accepted, typically the borrower has already been approved. We have submitted into underwriting prior to them even getting to the point where they're looking for a property. We tend to submit it and we aim for a 6-hour underwriting, which I'd find with most of my files is what happens. Once that part is done, we have a 7-day processing period for the processors to collect any additional documents that the underwriter is requesting, and then we close within 1 day. So it goes directly from processing into the underwriting for a 24-hour close. Now, with most lenders, what happens is you have a loan officer and a loan officer assistant that are communicating with the borrower, gathering any documentation that they may need, and then that goes to a processor. And then the processor may not agree with some of the terms that the loan officer and loan officer assistant have come up with and may request additional documentation. If they don't agree, there may be a back and forth process that can take as long as 7 to 10 days. So then once the processor agrees that the loan is ready to go, it gets submitted to an underwriter who makes a decision, and most lenders, that's 24 to 48-hour turnaround time. With us, typically, you're going to have an answer the same day.
That's great, and from the real estate side, I can vouch for the fact that when I place an offer with a fully approved letter, as opposed to, of course, it's still a conditional approval, but as opposed to a pre-qualification letter, that tends to make a huge difference in the seller accepting the offer.
I find that that is definitely the case when we send an approval letter that says that it's been underwritten. And I think the difference, as you said, it is a conditional approval, but the difference between that, a conditional approval from an underwriter and from a loan officer is I may know a lot about the loan, but I'm not an underwriter. So I put it in a system and I'll run DU or LP, which is our system to tell us whether the loan fits the guidelines. And then that's when you're getting a pre-qualification letter a loan officer has submitted to the system. When you get an approval letter, that is an actual human being who has approved the loan, and they have said as long as these conditions can be met, then this is an approved loan. And typically those are things like we need an explanation letter for something or additional pay stubs. But once it goes through underwriting, it comes back out. We collect all the conditions. Processing does usually within 7 days. It goes to closing 24 hours. And then you will get the CD 3 days prior to closing. Now the CD is the closing disclosure, which has all of the numbers that were agreed to and how much the loan's gonna cost, the interest rate, the payment, and then that gets signed, and 3 days later you've got a new home.
So I want to thank you, Suzette. I think you've provided a lot of really good information for potential home buyers, and I do appreciate that.
Well, thanks, Alex, for taking the time to interview. We always want to share information, especially when we can talk about movement mortgage and how it's different than other lenders.
For more information on home loans, visit movement.com.